If Jesus was in the process of okaying the consumption of unclean meats and abomination, he picked an incredibly odd way of showing it. He allowed the pigs to be possessed by fallen angels, by devils, and then to go leaping off of a cliff, hitting the ground, as well as drowning in water. Nothing about that entire process says bon appetit to me. There were many people who were poor and without food during the time Jesus walked on this earth, and nobody knew that better than he did. Instead of saying, get out the grill and having the people barbecue, cook them pigs, rather than allow them to do it, if he had cleaned or sanctioned those now abominations so they wouldn't be abominations anymore, why would you allow those pigs to be destroyed like that? Hello, welcome to Consider This. As always, your presence is truly appreciated. My name is Clement Norris, your host. And as always, I try my best not to tell you what to believe and or what not to believe, but rather what you should consider when determining what to believe or what to keep believing. Mark chapter 5 and verse 13 states the following: and forthwith Jesus gave them leave, and the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place into the sea. They were about 2,000 and were choked in the sea. Based on today's dollars, nearly 2,000 pigs would have a minimum value of about $60,000 and a maximum value of $400,000. I did a previous show. It was about pigs and whether or not Christians should eat them. In that program, I said I was going to do a show on the story that's found in 3 of the Gospels about the pigs, several thousand pigs to be exact, that went over a cliff. So I hope that you will stick around to the end, and that when it's all said and done, it'll be uh, informative, it will be edifying, that it will be a blessing to you. I have heard several different explanations on what transpired, why the pigs went over the cliff, but I have never heard one that's going to be what I plan on presenting today. And of course, as always, I want you to merely consider it. And like I said before, the story is in 3 of the Gospels. Obviously, I'm not going to read them all. I'm going to start, though, in the book of Matthew. In Matthew chapter 8, starting with verse 28, it states, and when he was come to the other side into the country of the Gergesenes, there met him 2 possessed with devils, coming out of the tombs, exceeding fierce, so that no man might pass by that way. And behold, they cried out, saying, what have we to do with thee, Jesus, thou Son of God? Art thou come hither to torment us before the time? And there was a good way off from them a herd of many swine feeding. According to the text, what the people saw from afar off was pigs eating in the field. But what Jesus saw was a multitude of abominations
and they were abominations because they were being used for food.
So the devils besought him, saying, If thou cast us out, suffer us to go away into the herd of swine. And he said unto them, Go. And when they were come out, they went into the herd of swine. And behold, the whole herd of swine ran violently down a steep place into the sea and perished in the waters. And they that kept them fled and went their way into the city and told everything and what was befallen to the possessed of the devils. And behold, the whole city came out to meet Jesus. And when they saw him, they besought him that he would depart out of their coast. Now, again, I just read the version of the story from the book of Matthew. However, I strongly encourage you to read the other two versions of this particular story. According to Matthew chapter 8 and verse 5, Jesus had entered the city of Capernaum. The Sea of Galilee separated the city of Capernaum from the city of Grenasias, and I don't think I'm pronouncing it right. The city of Capernaum was a Jewish city. According to the scholars, the biblical scholars, Grenasias was on Greek land, which makes sense considering it would have been extremely unlikely for a pig farm to be located on the Jewish side of the river. As a matter of fact, most, and I'm including scholars here, would say it's impossible. That pig farm was located on Greek territory. In Acts chapter 2, we hear about the very familiar story, the story of the Pentecost, when the Holy Spirit came down on all the people that were there and they started speaking in different languages. Acts chapter 2 and verse 5 states, And there were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Therefore, there could have been Jews in Gerasias. As a matter of fact, that might be one of the very reasons Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee and went there. Also, we should not ignore the fact that back then, just like today, it was fairly common for cities, countries, states, whatever you want to call them, to have some form of trade, either legally or illegally. Having this context is absolutely critical to understanding why did the fallen angels, these devils, ask Jesus to allow them to go into the pigs.
Fallen angels, these devils, are nothing more than opportunists. They saw an opportunity to possess more people and they went for it. Those angels wanted to enter those pigs so that they could use those pigs to enter God's people, particularly those who were knowingly eating pork, even though they knew that God prohibited it and referred to pork as an abomination. Contrary to what these fallen angels thought, Jesus was fully aware of why they wanted to enter the pigs.
What he decided to do was what he does best, and that is save his people. And therefore, he eliminated, you can call it a temptation, whatever, but he eliminated those pigs from his people so that they could avoid demonic possession. He saved his people even when his people did not realize he was saving them, just like he does today.
If Jesus wanted to approve the consumption of unclean meats such as pork, shrimp, catfish, it seems like this story could have been an excellent example of him doing so as soon as the pigs became a part of the story. Jesus knew that many of the people that were following him and those who weren't following him, he knew that they were hungry, they needed food. Rather than allowing the angels to go into the swine, he could have just simply said something like, as long as you all are thankful that you have this meat and you remember to pray over it, it's sanctified, it's okay. He didn't do that. He could have said to them, listen, this is now approved. So that which God has said is clean, let no man say it's unclean. But he didn't do that. He allowed the pigs to go over the cliff. It seems incredibly odd that God was excruciatingly clear about not eating unclean meat such as the pork and the catfish. Nobody reads those texts and then disputes, at least no one I know of, who then disputes that it is a prohibition against eating those certain types of meat. So why wouldn't the same God be just as clear about saying now it's okay, rather than sending nearly 2,000 pigs over a cliff, being crushed by rocks, followed by drowning, literally becoming fish food?
In an effort to justify eating what the Bible describes as unclean meats, such as pigs, catfish, and shrimp, other things, what people will do is they will refer to the story of Peter being on the roof when he had the vision. And on the sheet, there was all these unclean meats. Or they'll refer to the book of Corinthians, where Paul wrote to the Christians who were having a problem with, seems like, other Christians who would not eat meat, actual flesh animal meat that was offered to idols, regardless if it was considered biblically unclean or not. The fact that it was offered to an idol, they refused to eat it. And therefore, the Apostle Paul said, hey, let them eat vegetables, let them do a vegetarian diet. Matter of fact, he encouraged the other Christians to support them by eating a vegetarian diet with them, which I can assure you that most people who refer to that portion of the story, they conveniently leave that part out, or they refer to the a letter that the Apostle Paul wrote to Timothy, I believe it's First Timothy chapter 4, like verses maybe 4 and 5, when he said that everything God had created was good, that nothing should be refused, that it should be received with prayer and thanksgiving. They will refer to that verse, and of course, they'll say all you got to do is remember to pray over it, whether it's biblically unclean or not, and that makes it okay. If we analyze each one of those stories, I think it's, and I don't want to sound cocky, but really just it's more than easy to show that those stories are not used in a way to justify eating unclean meats. But let's just say, for sake of argument, these are the primary areas that people refer to, if not the only areas. But here's the thing, and this is what I hope you consider, that if they're using one and or all of them, they're using the wrong thing. Nowhere in the Bible does it says that we should lift up those stories, and those stories are going to draw people to Jesus Christ. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that Peter's vision on the roof was the foundation for what Christianity is. It's just simply not there. The Bible is clear that we should be focused on Jesus Christ, what he did, what he did not do, and why, which he made abundantly clear. He said, because he did always those things that pleased his Father. And one thing the Bible makes, I think, crystal clear, and I've never ran across anybody who disagreed with this, is that the Father made it clear that eating pork would have displeased him because he, not the church, God referred to it as an abomination. And there's many things in the Bible that God referred to an abomination. And ironically, you won't hear anybody trying to justify those other abominations. But when it comes to food, all of a sudden, that one abomination is okay because somehow Jesus did away with that one. When in reality, Jesus would not have committed an abomination and then say, well, now it's clean because I've done it. All those people before me, those hundreds of thousands, those millions of people who were not able to do it because of what now that I showed up, okay, now it's fine and you all can go ahead and do it. Or it's okay for me to do it, but it wasn't okay for you all to do it. What we have to recognize is when we're talking with or to people, regardless of how they look, their color, how articulate they are, how well they know their Bible, when they're using the scriptures in a manner that reflects the flesh rather than the spirit. Because when we look at the spirit of the Bible, Jesus is what we should be looking at. Jesus did not do it, and we should be following in his steps and not extracting stories here and there to try to justify doing what he would not do. Yesterday, today, or in the future.
When we search the scriptures, he said, search the scriptures thinking we have life because they are they which testify of him. And when we search the scriptures, we will discover that this story, this particular story, is the absolute only story that you will find in the entire New Testament where there is a reference to Jesus Christ and an unclean animal, one that was not supposed to be eaten. This is the only story. And we do not read that Jesus blessed them or sanctified them. What we read is that he contributed to their destruction by allowing them to be possessed by devils and then going over a cliff. Unfortunately, it seems like too many of us have taken on the name of Jesus, but rather than follow him, we're following our denomination or our pastor. Because as far as our denomination is concerned, it's okay to eat whatever you want. As far as most pastors are concerned, it's okay to eat whatever you want. The only caveat being, you're just supposed to be thankful and pray over it first. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. It is always truly appreciated.